Stephanie Agresta. I'm the Global Director of Enterprise Growth at Qnary, which is an executive reputation technology and solutions company based in New York. I'm thrilled to be here today with these industry leaders to talk about what it takes for the world's greatest retailers and brands to compete right now in e-commerce, and precisely what they are doing and how you compete with the behemoth of Amazon and Alibaba. So we're going, actually, I started my career in digital marketing 20 years ago at barnesandnoble.com, where we competed with this tiny little startup in Seattle called Amazon. It's grown quite a bit since 1998, but their essence of disruption is still exactly the same. So we'd love to dive in and hear from you guys. So why don't we start here and go down the line and just tell us a little bit about who you are and what your company does in the world of e-commerce.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Caroline Klatt. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Headliner Labs. And Headliner powers mobile messaging between brands and customers. So we work with really big retailers like Cole Haan and Sally Beauty and Saks Fifth Avenue, and we enable them to send automated direct messages to their customers. And I started my career in e-commerce in high school, really, before it was even a thing. I worked at McKinsey consulting for brands moving into e-commerce and then at a very big e-commerce startup. So have been working with companies both on the marketing side and now as a technology provider who are trying to understand how to really compete with Amazon on experience, on price, and on convenience.
Great, Rob?
Great. I'm Rob Holland. I'm with Bluecore. Bluecore is a marketing technology company that helps retailers and direct-to-consumer marketers find their best customers and keep them for life. We do this by bringing together technology that collects identity, product, and behavioral data and brings it together in real time so that you can create really high-fidelity, personalized communications that can be passed out through different channels, including email, social, display, et cetera. We work with about 400 retailers around 65 countries, and we are focused heavily on helping them create high impact campaigns that drive revenue at a fraction of the effort it takes right now through traditional legacy marketing technology platforms. I've been doing e-commerce for most of my career as well through the brand and the retail side, and also spent time at Nielsen working with brands and retailers and Datalogix in the ad tech space before Bluecore.
Hi, I'm Heather Marie Udo. I'm the founder and CEO of Shoppable. And at Shoppable, we created and patented the universal checkout technology, which essentially allows or helps advertisers, retailers, enterprise CPGs, publishers bring the checkout experience directly to the consumer throughout any type of non-traditional e-com experience. So Shoppable ads, Shoppable video, we do content sites, a lot of different types of interactive shopping experiences.
Great. So 20 years ago, it used to be that the e-commerce numbers would double year over year. In 2017, 25% growth year over year for e-retail sales, representing just over 10% of total sales in retail. And that number is supposed to grow to 17.5 by 2021. So given that outlook, and we know this is not going away, how are you helping your customers be relevant, and what are the specific strategies they're doing, and who are they looking at when they think through what makes them strategic in this space?
Yeah.
You want to start, Caroline?
Sure, absolutely. Okay. So it's astounding how quickly e-commerce is growing and how important it is. And especially the trend of more traditional retailers, I think finally waking up to the fact that those experiences need to be really thoughtful, and it's the only way to attract the next generation of shopper who isn't going to those stores at all. And so to us, messaging is the new frontier in communications. There are lots of important channels, and all of the channels have to be holistic and connected to one another. But essentially, your customer spends all day, every day on their phone. Like, I'm sure many of you right now are on your phone, and you should be. That's what I would be doing. But that's where your customer is, right? And so if you are a retailer and you want to be communicating with your customer, your messaging has to be great. It has to be personal. It has to be spot on, and it has to be in a channel where your customers are engaging. And so messaging is, we open up that direct communication, and once you're doing that, it's building out experiences where me as a customer, I'm getting the immediate 24/7 personalized help that I would get in a store, minus the 24/7 piece of it, bringing that sort of level of personalization and communication to the mobile, like the digital experience.
And that's not just retailers too, it's brands too. You have some big brands that
Major
want to
brands,
make that
yeah.
direct connection with the consumers that are looking to chat.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's anyone really selling anything needs to be communicating in the channels where customers are spending time.
And Rob, you mentioned your multi-channel. How does social communications fit in? What's the interplay with email? I know that there's been a strong success rate for your clients in email. Tell us a little bit about how that works.
Well, it's really they all blend together. That one of the things when you look at the growth of e-commerce and the stats that we just been discussing, this is all really becoming a blur. And while that's what everyone says, the reality is it truly is. So social is really just another communication point. It's an important one because that's where a lot of people spend a lot of time. So being able to make sure that the types of messages and communication that you're putting together, whether it's in-store, through direct mail, through email, through social, make sense, and that they are consistent and they're appropriate given the context of where the consumer is. That's really the key. And being able to really have a holistic 360-degree view of the customer, their behaviors, the product interests and affinities, and bringing that together to create the right types of communications is critical. And that's what drives conversions, that's what drives engagement, and that's what drives a healthy brand to customer relationship.
Heather, access, being available with those right messages wherever they want to be. Can you talk a little bit about how Shoppable does that?
Yeah, so 50% of product searches today actually originate on Amazon, and if you're a brand, you have to be on Amazon. But also, if you think about where retailers were even 10 years ago, you still found retailers that at that point in time were saying, why do we need to be online? We have an offline, we have physical stores. So now you have retailers that have their offline stores, their online stores, but it's still not enough because so many searches are starting directly on Amazon. You have to move beyond that. You have to move further up the funnel and be able to engage with consumers and get your products not only discovered by consumers further up, but also be able to enable that shopping capability further up the channel. And to Caroline's point on social and messaging, there's so many millennials today that aren't even opening their emails anymore. They're not picking up the phone. They're simply on chat, or they're in Snapchat Messenger or Instagram Messenger. So how do you get in front of that type of consumer? You have to start changing your behavior and in your marketing efforts to be able to engage with them in a natural experience. And one example, just I think last week, there's a influencer on Instagram called Something Navy, which most people in this room have probably never heard of. She's got a little over 1 million followers, and she did a private label clothing line with Nordstrom, and drove, one report said over $1 million in revenue in one day. Another report said $4 million in revenue in one day. And it just goes to show how much that direct engagement and kind of more authentic advertising can drive revenue when you're directly talking to your consumers.
Especially given that young people today are much more immune to typical online ads. So sponsored content is something you guys work with. Can you talk about a client that uses sponsored content, like long form content?
Long form content? I think it's not really long form content per se, but we've done a lot of different types of things. Like, I guess one example is we did with BuzzFeed and with L'Oreal, we created this really kind of interactive game. I think it was called, I can't remember the name of it, but anyway, it was an interactive game within BuzzFeed in a typical BuzzFeed type of style. So it was something that consumers expect of BuzzFeed, but all the products that were throughout the game were obviously makeup products sponsored by L'Oreal, and everything was directly shoppable. You could get the look that you kind of created as part of this game at the end of it.
And I mean, there are people, do you find still price shopping on Amazon? And how do you kind of keep them in those environments?
Yeah, so on price comparison, there's actually just a report, I think, earlier this week from CNBC that in a lot of the common areas, if a product is available on Amazon, it's pretty stagnant in pricing from both Walmart and Target, and somewhat Walgreens and CVS, but the major players are not really fluctuating in price as much as they used to, just because Amazon's so competitive. And again, if everyone has their one-click login, most people are starting their purchases directly at Amazon. If they're going to compare, you want to be able to match that.
Right. So a lot of it is also relationship driven, and access to relationships and having a direct connection with the customer, first party data. So that's something both of you guys focus on as well. So Carolyn and Rob, can you talk a little bit about how you build those relationships today in a way that kind of gets the consumer upstream?
Well, I think, like to everyone's point, the customer journey is really multifaceted, right? They're on social, they're on your site, they're getting communications in all sorts of ways. But that experience, that's the edge of a brand or a retailer over Amazon, because nobody's gonna really compete on price and certainly not on convenience, right? If I need something today, I could order it on Amazon and it will arrive. It could be Prime in an hour and it could be same day shipping. And so experience is really where you differentiate yourself. And that can be done in lots of different ways. When we think about messaging, so I often say this, one of our investors actually said it to me the first time, but she was the founder of beauty.com. And she said, when you walk into a store, somebody looks at you and says like, oh, Caroline, like, you have hair, it's dead and color treated. I could fix this, right? And then $200 later, I leave with 7 products and I'm like, oh my God, my hair is gonna be amazing. I've just changed my life. And that's just the conversation, right? It's just somebody looking at me and making me feel like I'm an authority. I can find you the right stuff. And so we leverage chat to deliver those experiences. A good example is Way Hair Care. So this is probably the most important beauty brands. Any beauty investor out there right now, Way Hair Care. It's Jen Atkins' line. She's Kim Kardashian's hairstylist. So she launched this line. It sold out in Sephora, like you couldn't find a single product anywhere. And then she launched her own website, and she found this challenge that people were shopping a little bit less. They were abandoning their shopping carts, and they were buying fewer products. And so they actually came to Headliner and said, we want to reach back out to our customers inside of Messenger or messaging, that's where they spend time. But when we reach out to them, it's in a chat, so they could type back. So what if they could type back and tell us about their hair type and we could recommend products? And so that's what we do for them, right? You go on the Way site, you can all try this, add a couple of shampoos to your cart.
Tell them how to spell it, because it's...
It's O-U-A-I, like French, the way. But it's, if you leave the site, they'll actually follow up with you and say, hey there, we saw you were looking at some products. Do you want to get personalized recommendations? And you answer 7 questions about your hair type. And at the end, all inside of a Messenger channel, they can send you products that you can add to bag and seamlessly check out. And it's that sort of personal relationship reaching me exactly where I am. So I was, maybe shopping on my desk, and then I left the office and I'm on the way to the gym, and I could be having this whole conversation with my personal hairstylist, getting products, buying them, and then going to do a workout seamlessly.
Without being intrusive.
It's what I want.
Yeah.
I don't actually mind brands being intrusive, to be frank. That's where people should reach me. And
that's because there's value to you as a consumer.
Absolutely.
Right? And it's personalized and it's curated. And it's really interesting because that's really the goal, but the challenge is you got to make sure you can't mess around with identity. When you're this low into the funnel and you're going for purchases, you got to be right? So you can't just do some probabilistic matching like you can on the upper funnel and brand advertising and kind of assume that we're Caroline, because Caroline loves that experience. If I'm the person getting it, I'm totally turned off, right? Because the cookie match was probabilistic and I was part of the probability that didn't work out, right? So it's critical to make that happen because you're driving a purchase and really being able to understand the identity and then connect the products and behaviors, whether they're characteristics and attributes around the hair type or what are your interests and your affinities and what products relate to other products so you can make predictions about future product purchases using data science and AI but that all really needs integrity at that foundational level to succeed at scale. And that's one of the biggest problems with this because that's still an industry problem. It can happen in pockets, but it has to happen broad scale. And that's what Amazon does real well.
What else do you consider Amazon to do really well besides kind of knowing that data and acting on it?
You know, they're setting the bar for experience, right? So I think we're all used to free shipping. We're all used to 2-day delivery. We realize now how, as consumers, what purchases can I think about right now and actually just execute on my phone or my computer, and it's there in 2 days versus the time I get to go to the store and schedule it in versus what do I need to have like right this second, right? And so they're constantly raising the bar, and that's changing consumer expectations, and it's creating a halo effect that the industry has to respond to succeed. And many companies are doing a great job of that. They're living in the Amazon shadow.
Yeah. Heather, do you see the same type
Yeah,
trends?
yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, and I think part of, one of the things that they've done an incredible job doing, and they have a massive team, is with the search functionality, within it. So 90% of product searches that originate on Amazon result in a purchase. So that level of conversion is just unheard of everywhere else. So to be able to so quickly get consumers directly in front of that right product is obvious. Between that and the one click and the convenience and the two-day to same-day shipping and on in major cities as well, they've got that part just completely nailed.
And does that translate in your mind to voice? I mean, I personally don't find Alexa as effective from a search perspective.
Yeah,
Not yet.
No, it's not, and it's one of the big fears, in particular in the CPG space, because Amazon or Alexa's not going to give you 50,000 results, and then you see the first page of results or everything. She usually gives you, I think it's 2 or 3, and if you're not one of those 2 or 3 items, then as more and more consumers, I mean, Alexa still. It hasn't taken over like everyone's thought yet, but I think, stay tuned. It's a new platform for consumers, but as more and more consumers start to adapt it, it is a very big concern for a lot of companies, in particular CPGs, because if you're not that first one, how do you become the second one and get that consumer?
And is it pay to play?
Not yet, but I'm sure that's
It will be.
That's going to be next. The other problem too with it is that Amazon has a lot of private label. So if you're ordering batteries, of course Amazon's going to push Amazon Basic. So where does that leave Duracell and Energizer? And it's going to get very, very expensive probably very quickly to be that other option.
Which will have an impact on digitally native e-retail companies too versus very large established retailers. I want to make sure we understand it from new companies that are approaching this from a digital first perspective. Rob, you were going to...
Yeah. So on a digital first perspective, and just even the whole voice is new. Cell phones were big when they first started, and look what an iPhone or an Android does today. So it's here to stay. That is the new shelf. We talk about shelf space and all the merchandising and where do you put your product on the shelf and how do you voice is the new shelf. So we got to figure that out because it will have implications that are profound and we don't know what they're going to be. Direct to consumers, it's really interesting because we work with a bunch of them, and they're really looking at technology as the competitive advantage, which is interesting, and it is in many ways. But many of them are now creating pop-up stores or marquee stores. So Casper's got a store in Manhattan, and Untucked's got stores, and they're all over the place.
So does
Away
Amazon.
has stores, and Amazon's putting in stores, right? So stores are where people go, just like the phone is where people go. It's just points of distribution, and it's just a way to make the experience more visceral and more human, and it's a blend. So they will survive and thrive in the Amazon world. It goes back to, ironically, Sears, which brought catalogs to rural America 120 years ago when there were barely roads. And then they brought them to malls when cars became available on roads, right? So like it's just, and supercenters, now Amazon, so it's just all part of a continuum. The direct consumers will have the reverse problem too. They need to be present.
And there's a one-to-one communication involved in voice too. I mean, with people being able to connect through their Amazon devices or other devices and make product recommendations. So do you have any ideas on how, kind of that direct social communication will happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think to Rob's point, voice is here to stay. I'm a big believer. I have a 2-year-old daughter, and her first word was Google, because she talks to Google every morning, right? And so that was it. If I say, like, what does a cow say? She goes, Google. Could you jump in here? So voice is definitely here to stay. We've worked with some brands on voice. People are not shopping that way yet. Like, we're at the very beginning of commerce on voice. I think first will be basics. First will be like Amazon, I need toilet paper. I need batteries, if you need batteries for anything anymore. Right? But that will go first. And I think by the time this is a mainstream behavior, it will look very different. I for sure think it's going to be a critical part of the shopping journey. And like you said, it's the one-on-one experience. It's talking. Like, I'm so lazy, I don't want to even type on my phone anymore. We'll get there. But I think it's really early.
Yeah, and we're going to open it up to questions in 1 minute. One last thought for the panel here. Let's play the long game a little bit. Rob, I think on our pre-panel call you said that it's never a winner take all. So who is going to win? What does that look like? And how do people that are really interested in competing today get there?
So I think there are 3 big principles that we sort of organize around at Bluecore, but I believe very firmly. I mentioned it before, but Amazon's not going to be the only winner. It's recasting sort of as a big shadow, but there will be many, many companies that thrive, not just survive. You just have to reinvent your model. And it's a new game, and there's no looking back. So there's an opportunity to win. It's not doom and gloom. It's just a major restructuring, so we're seeing the fallout of that. Second thing, it's all about connecting the person to the product. So if you're a brand or a retailer, you can't abdicate or walk away from that relationship. You have to find a relationship. You can't be disintermediated by a voice box down the road that can really control your brand. So you have to control the experience and really connect your brand to consumers. And then the third thing is the amount of work and options for marketers today are exponentially, they're just exploding. So what channel do you do? What kind of communication? What message? What offer? What product? You can't do it anymore. So they're trying to do it legacy systems and spreadsheets, and they're choking. Technology has to innovate to drive step function changes so that the right fidelity that the consumer expects can be delivered in any kind of personalization content. You can't just spell my name wrong on an email list anymore, and that's personalization. It doesn't work.
And just to add to the first thing Rob was saying, I mean, you can't compete with Amazon by trying to build a bigger, better Amazon. So I think it's interesting. Walmart's been doing a number of different acquisitions, and I think they're kind of building out their arsenal to. I think it'll be interesting to see exactly what they do with it and what's I think TBD on some announcements that are probably coming from them. But I also think that an interesting one to watch is Google. That's obviously massive search giant and losing and has been losing share to Amazon search ads, but also kind of their commerce play and the direction that they go. I think will be interesting. As same thing with social networks and different things that they're testing now, like Snapchat's been doing some shoppable ads, and Google's been testing some shoppable ads. So I think it'll be really interesting to see where those different companies go. But I don't think it's winner take all. But I think everyone you have to do different things to win against Amazon.
Great. And Carolyn, final words, and then we're gonna get your questions ready.
Yeah, I think it's about experience. Amazon's great. I think the customer wins in that every retailer has to play against Amazon standards of shipping time, of returns, of speed, of accessibility, of instant payments. But there is no experience on Amazon, and especially if you talked about digital natives, right? You look at Warby Parker and Untuckit and Glossier and Greats. Their social media their pop-up stores looks like you're walking into their Instagram account. That's an experience that its consumers really value, and Amazon doesn't compete on that. So obviously,
Yeah, they don't do Instagram.
there is no experience, right? Like talk about shelf
Yeah.
space. There is no real shelf space if you're a brand on Amazon. I know Amazon's been trying lots of different ways to change that, but to date hasn't been successful, and that's where brands can really differentiate. I think it's the more traditional legacy retailers that have been pretty slow to deliver on that experience. So when you look at like Net-a-Porter, Farfetch, the really successful multi-brand retailers online, their experience was exceptional. Like if you get their boxes, they're beautiful. You have a personal stylist that might reach out to you. You can free shipping, free returns, label in the box. And you had legacy players that were really slow to start doing things like that, but the ones who will do that and can do it quickly, I mean, talk about speed, I think will be fine.